Let's get into this first story here about Tucker Carlson. So, this here shows you that no one is exempt and no one is immune, because Tucker Carlson, journalist, really well known. He traveled to Israel. We're going to get into why he was there in the first place. And he was detained apparently in the Ben Gurion airport. This is a big one. Him and Mike Huckabee had been going back and forth on X past couple of days about how Christians are treated in Israel. And so that's what prompted a lot of this. So Tucker Carlson agreed to go there to interview Mike Huckabee. Little did he know what would happen after that. Now, before he went there, and I wonder if this also has something to do with it, before he went there, he had an interview with a Christian pastor, Faris Ibrahim. And this pastor told Tucker Carlson something about Mike Johnson. Listen to what he says.
Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House.
Oh, yes.
He's a very prominent evangelical third in line presidency. Last August, he went to Israel. He prayed at the Western Wall. He went to a settlement in the West Bank. And he planted trees in those settlements in the West Bank. And he declared that these Judeans and Sumerian hills belong to the Jewish people by divine right. We're
going to be so punished for this. We're going to be punished for this. I'm just telling you.
He never interacted and met with people go and visit the dead stones, but they forget about the living stones. There are people there who are suffering because of this system that keeps oppressing them and applying pressure, and their numbers are shrinking. The people are leaving. Mike.
So he was telling Tucker Carlson that Mike Johnson went there and planted a tree or whatever in the West Bank and said that this is for Israel. Mike Johnson is another one that is very much captured and bows to the state of Israel. But this interview, from what I understand, happened before Tucker Carlson went to Israel to interview Mike Huckabee, because if you watch the full interview, which I think many have seen, but if you watch the full interview at the very beginning, Tucker Carlson says, we're going to Israel and here's the reason why. So he explained, why they were going there. Now, I'm just going to come out and say it. I don't think he should have went, because I feel like if Mike Huckabee wanted to have an interview with Tucker Carlson, Mike Huckabee could have done that interview right here in the US. That's how I feel. But he went there. And another thing that was mentioned during this interview here with the Christian pastor was what Tucker Carlson said about the politicians being captured.
You wind up, as I know you wind up with Christian politicians who are constantly invoking the name of Jesus, supporting the murder of their fellow Christians in the Levant. So that is I think that's very serious. I don't think you should do that. I think you're going to suffer for that. Don't do that. How can you excuse or aid in the murder of innocents in the name of Jesus? And I've said this directly to a bunch of these politicians because I get very upset about it. And they're under a spell. They don't, even in private, they're well, we have to. What is that?
Last December.
Yeah. So you guys know Tucker Carlson has been pretty vocal about not supporting not just Israel, but we need to focus on what's happening right here in America. Politicians shouldn't be bending the knee to another country. And he's been very vocal about that. And because of that, he's been attacked by a number of people on the right. So he decided, I guess, to settle this with Mike Huckabee about how Christians are being treated in Israel. And he announces it here, why he decided to go. So listen to this.
First is we're flying to Jerusalem to interview Mike Huckabee. Mike Huckabee is, of course, the American ambassador to Israel, someone I've known for over 30 years and always liked, and also a Baptist preacher of some kind, but certainly a prominent Baptist religious figure. also U.S. ambassador and someone who has views that I just don't agree with at all on questions of American foreign policy and also on questions of theology. He's a famous Christian Zionist, and a famous proponent of neocon foreign policy. I disagree with both. However, it seems like of all the people you could talk to, maybe Mike Huckabee is a guy you could talk to in a reasonable way, in a calm way, without shouting or hatred. By the way, if you want a picture of what hell itself is like, it's shouting and hatred. It's a large group of people screaming, calling for violence. That is literally a picture of hell, and don't live in it if you can help it. We don't want to. So maybe Huckabee is the guy to begin a reasonable conversation about what's best for the United States and what's true about Christian theology. So we're going to try. We're flying to Jerusalem. Difficult to do, not without risk, but we're doing it because we really believe that the direction that this conversation is moving is bad. It's bad for everybody. It's bad for the country, and it's bad for our souls.
Well, they flew there to interview Mike Huckabee. Again, I don't see Mike Huckabee as reasonable, especially on this issue. If I was Tucker Carlson, I would have said, if you want to have this conversation, we need to have it, right here. We could do this conversation virtually or whatever. But Mike Huckabee, I guess, wanted him to come there to show him, we'll show you how Christians are treated so you can see it for yourself. Now, from what I understand, Tucker Carlson didn't even go. From what I understand, I don't think he even left the airport, but apparently he was detained. And many are starting to ask, did Mike Huckabee set up Tucker Carlson? Let's go ahead and get into it. He spoke with the Daily Mail, and Mike Huckabee is already trying to deny this. Tucker Carlson detained in Israel. Journalists dragged into interrogation room as explosive interview sparks diplomatic firestorm. Conservative podcasting titan Tucker Carlson said he and his staff were detained in Israel on Wednesday following an interview with Donald Trump's ambassador to the country. Of course, that was Mike Huckabee. The former Fox News host flew into Tel Aviv for a sit-down with Mike Huckabee, who challenged Carlson to speak to him directly following an online spat about the country's treatment of Christians. Carlson, who also frequently criticizes Israel for its military actions in Gaza, took Huckabee up on his offer. But as critics and pro-Israel activists begin piling on Carlson for purportedly not leaving the airport during his brief visit, he revealed that he was met with hostility in the Middle Eastern country. So he didn't even leave the airport. It goes on to say, Carlson exclusively told the Daily Mail that shortly after the interview, Israeli officials confiscated his passport and hauled one of his colleagues off to an interrogation room. Men who identified themselves as airport security took our passports, hauled our executive producer in a side room, and then demanded to know what we spoke to Ambassador Huckabee about. Now, again, Mike Huckabee is an American citizen. Why do they need to know what he talked to Mike Huckabee about? It's a pariah. It was bizarre. We're now out of the country. Prior to the interview, Carlson posted a photo on X of himself and his business partner, Neil Patel. They were in front of the Ben Gurion airport on Wednesday with the caption, "Greetings from Israel." Let's continue on a little bit more here. Of course, you guys know what Mike Huckabee looks like. Too bad Tucker stayed in the airport in the face of so many invitations to see so many wonderful places. A huge and obviously intentional missed opportunity. That's coming from David Friedman, who is the former U.S. ambassador to Israel during Trump's first term. Two sources familiar with the matter, however, told the Daily Mail that the Israeli government initially did not want to allow Carlson into the country, prompting a delicate negotiation involving the State Department. So this is a big red flag. They did not want him there. Again, we showed the video of members of the Likud party saying that Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens need to be taken down. So, of course, they were not going to send a welcoming invitation to Tucker Carlson. In the end, the Israeli government decided not to bar Carlson from entering the country in order to avoid a diplomatic incident. A spokesman for the U.S. Embassy in Israel denied that Carlson was detained, of course, and claimed he received the same passport control questions that countless visitors to Israel, including Ambassador Huckabee and other diplomats, received as part of a normal entrance and exit from Israel. Well, no, that's not possible, because he said they asked him, what did he speak to Mike Huckabee about? So the treatment was not the same. It is not accurate that Israel only was going to let Tucker into the country for an interview, the representative added. The only engagement the embassy had with Israel about his visit was to coordinate his private plane landing as part of facilitating a seamless visit. It was Tucker who chose to only come into the country for a few hours and depart, and Tucker received the same positive treatment of any visitors to Israel. So what I will say about that is, what does that say about the state of Israel, that this is how you would treat visitors? Again, they may say, oh, well, security, protection, we have to protect ourselves. Okay, it's a little bit extreme, don't you think? You have to protect yourselves. You're the one that's already attacking, you're always attacking everyone else. So you'll see this here, that Gen X girl shared this. Tucker Carlson interviews Mike Huckabee, Israel freaks out. So check this out here, because Mike Huckabee, like I said, he's trying to call BS on this. Listen.
Shortly after the Daily Mail article was published, the Israeli government, Israeli media, Israeli influencers, and U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee jumped on social media in what appears to be a coordinated campaign to call Carlson a liar, while simultaneously admitting Israel airport security did in fact detain and question him. U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee, citing a literal Israeli propagandist who attended Israel's paid influencer event and is a self-described Israeli who served in the IDF, Mike Huckabee quickly sided with Israel instead of Tucker Carlson, an American who was on his return flight to the U.S.
That just goes to show you just how corrupt he is, right? So here's the tweets here from Mike Huckabee, where he's just retweeting, reposting propagandists. He was willing to side with a member of the IDF before he would believe a word that another American citizen said. So that just tells you who Mike Huckabee really appreciates and values here.
In a separate post, Huckabee sided with another Israeli who admitted to Tucker Carlson's interrogation, but per their usual propaganda, claimed it was a nice chat. AIPAC, Israel lobby's biggest player, AIPAC, quickly jumped to Mike Huckabee's defense by claiming Huckabee stood on principle and told the truth, so Tucker had to invent a bogus lie to change the story. AIPAC also referred to Carlson as a Qatari resident, a dog whistle to their year-long campaign of painting Carlson as an agent of Qatar because he criticizes Israel.
So do you guys see this? The craziness, and Mike Huckabee participated in it. So the good news is that Tucker Carlson was able to get back to the U.S., but just because he came back, like I said, sometimes they come back, that doesn't mean he wasn't detained. That doesn't mean he wasn't treated inappropriately. See, that's the catch. There are many people on social media saying, well, he made it back here, so what's the big deal? That doesn't mean he wasn't detained, right? Rick Sanchez talked about his own experience, and I thought this was interesting. Rick says he believes Tucker Carlson. Listen to this.
Hey, everybody, I'm Rick Sanchez, and I wanted to comment on the situation with Tucker Carlson. Full transparency, Tucker is my friend. He and I communicate quite often, and just this morning, I communicated with him, not to divulge anything that we communicated about, but the reason I say that is because I trust Tucker, and if Tucker says that he was detained or felt like he was detained at Ben Gurion Airport, then I take him at his word, despite what many in the media are doing, which is criticizing him, The Independent. I was just reading an article. They have a huge headline that says Tucker Carlson claims. The word claims implies that they're doubting his story. They're basically trying to call him a liar. I think this is an important story. And let me say something to you, and maybe this is kind of a teaser, but let me ask you a question, or maybe I'm asking myself this question. If I had a choice between being detained or held by Israeli security officials or Iranian security officials, which one would I choose and why? I'm going to give the answer to that question in just a little bit, and I have a little bit of experience with it because double deep tease, I was just recently detained by Iranian security officials for 2.5 hours, kind of similar to the situation that Tucker was in. And let me tell you something, no matter who detains you, when you lose your freedom and you feel vulnerable like that, it's scary as hell, okay? You don't know what's going on. You know you can't leave. You know you're being held. and you don't know what's going to happen, and it gets a little dicey. So let's go back to what Tucker situation is. So Tucker Carlson went along with his business partner, Neil Patel. There's a picture of them now that Tucker put out. It's the only one that they have put out so far. While they were there at Ben Gurion Airport, after arriving, they went to have a meeting with Mike Huckabee. And after the meeting with Mike Huckabee, they went back to the airport. But first of all,
again, this is why sometimes I wonder if this was a trap. I wonder if Mike Huckabee did this to try to like trap Tucker Carlson or something like that.
Why the meeting with Mike Huckabee? He went to meet with Mike Huckabee because Huckabee had taken offense to the fact that Tucker had criticized him. Why had Tucker criticized him? Tucker had criticized him because Mike Huckabee is a Christian Zionist. He is a neocon, kind of like a Lindsey Graham type or a Hillary Clinton type, exactly the same in that sense. But Mr. Huckabee seems, even though he works for the United States and is the ambassador from the United States to Israel, he always seems much more beholden and much more loyal to Israel than he is to the United States, by far. So it's curious because that's not usually the role of a diplomat when he's sent overseas to represent his country. Tucker has said that on various occasions, and he's absolutely, I believe, right in that criticism. So Mr. Huckabee then took to social media and started criticizing Mr. Carlson, basically saying something to the effect of, "Oh, you're a big guy criticizing me, but why don't you come and say this stuff to my face?" Which is pretty much what he told him. And Tucker said, "Okay, I'll get on a plane and I'll go talk to you to your face." And which is why Tucker is in Israel talking to him. Somewhat courageous of Tucker to go there, by the way. So Tucker's story is that after he did the interview with Huckabee, he was stopped by security officials at the airport. And those officials at the airport took his passport and his producer into a holding area and started interviewing him, debriefing him. I don't know what word you want to use, but when you're being asked questions you don't necessarily want to answer, and you know you have permission from the ambassador of the United States in that country, why are they doing this? Why are they asking him questions? Call Mike Huckabee. He works for you too, and for the United States of America, right? Dual role. Why are you asking me these questions? Why are you taking my passport? Why are you doing these things? I think it's a legitimate complaint. I think it's a legitimate question. And I think that's the one that Tucker's raising or bringing to the forefront in all of this. Nonetheless, now there are some questions about whether he was actually detained or not. So you know, Tucker has left Israel. He was able to get out. And all he was saying this was a very uncomfortable moment.
So what I will add here, and some people look at detained as different things. Like some people feel like detained means you got arrested. But detained basically means that, like, yeah, they'll take you aside, they'll pull you in one of those rooms and start asking you all these questions. Someone mentioned in the chat, but the reality is that people have been known to miss their flights because of that. We don't know. I imagine at some point Tucker Carlson is going to come forward and talk about this publicly. I imagine so, at least. But the reality is, I just feel like this was a setup from Mike Huckabee. I think that Mike Huckabee did not have good intentions going into this at all. And if I was Tucker Carlson, I would have never gone over there to begin with. Mike Huckabee could have had that conversation with Tucker Carlson right here in the US. It didn't have to be in Israel. And I don't know. And you got to look at it this way. Had it been anyone else, they may not have made it back here. Jeremy Lafredo, who's a journalist with the Gray Zone, Jeremy Lafredo went to Israel, to do some reporting, and he was put into a prison for a couple of days. Like, I don't know if everyone remembers this story, but that's what I'm saying. Like, had it been, Jeremy Lafredo in that situation, he may have been thrown right back in prison. So you never know, but we'll have to see. We'll see. We'll see what he says. Like I said, I imagine he's probably going to make a statement publicly at some point in time. But I do feel like this was just some type of trick from Mike Huckabee. Just being honest with you. I don't trust Mike Huckabee. I think he's full of shit. But he is back. And sometimes they do come back. So we will see. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.